Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here in the Nerd Party Network, where me and Dallas King make our way through the A24 filmography and now TV shows, and in between bring you interviews with the talent involved. In this episode, I'm joined by Jack W. Gregory, who was a consultant on one of my favourite A24 films, The Souvenir. Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
So for those not familiar with The Souvenir, it's about a young film student, Julie, played by Swinton Byrne, in the early 1980s, who becomes romantically involved with a complicated and untrustworthy man, Anthony, played by Tom Burke, who is tackling a drug addiction and is threatening to spiral out of control. So Jack, I'd like to use this as a bit of trivia on IMDb as a bit of a jumping off point, really. And it says, Jack W. Gregory was initially brought on for the part of Ray. However, after a conversation with Joanna Hogg, he was brought in to consult with her and Tom Burke on several of the film's aspects due to his own past experiences. So this bit of trivia seemed to capture you kind of perfectly. You've got a really diverse range of creative talents. I'm going to say these are some of your things and not limited to a writer, a producer, editor, actor, cinematographer, composer, but you've also lived a life of experience where you've spoken online and other mediums about sort of battles with drink, drugs and homelessness and the challenges that go with them, and you've been able to bring that to The Souvenir. So I really want to dive into sort of the creative side kind of first. Have you always been attracted to sort of the creative industry for a potential role and passion?
When I was growing up, I always had a sort of a penchant for drama. I always loved drama at school. It's the only thing I could do well. I could put myself. I wasn't comfortable in my own body. I wasn't comfortable with who I was. One of my earliest memories is being told by my mum on my 8th birthday that she loved me very much, but she wasn't my real mum. So I always sought escape. I didn't want to be me. So I dove into my own sort of world of imagination, but I couldn't read or write. So I did it by mimicking people. I would make up these stories that would be just barefaced lies, basically, but it was a world that I sort of fell in. And I felt really comfortable. I was good at drama at school. I was good at mimicking. I was good at voices. I was good at accents. And I used that to my advantage, really, after leaving school and becoming a long form hustler for a while. It helped to have active imagination, let's say.
What were maybe some of the early influences on you, sort of in terms of maybe, as such a creative talent like yourself, what were maybe the books, films, authors, actors that you looked at and thought, oh, I think they're fantastic how they act, or I really like how they write, or these films that kind of get you really excited?
I'd always been into films. Like I said, I couldn't read or write. I was put down as a naughty child, so I was sent to a school for kids with behavioural problems, but I sort of fell into films, and I've always had a passion for films. I grew up in a small town called Normanton in West Yorkshire, just outside Wakefield, and Rhys Dinsdale, who was known for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at the time. He did a film called ID. Rhys is a lad from my hometown. He was a big part of my growing up. His father, Alan, who passed recently, God bless him, was my sort of godparent. He was a sponsor when I delved into Christianity when I was a little younger, trying to look for something that I couldn't find for a long time. But so ID was a big film for me. I've always had a thing for drama, the dramatic films. Basketball Diaries is one that always resounds with me. It's my go-to film, and it kind of, I suppose, the Basketball Diaries is kind of sort of parallel to my life. You know, I'm not Jim Carroll, but you know, I've always had even though I've not been able to write them down, I've always had a head for words. I've always loved poetry. I always said that as soon as I learned to read and write, I'd write a poetry book. It took me over 20 years, but you know, I managed it. Yeah, you know, Jim Carroll was just a big sort of influence on me. You know, his story, his struggle. And you know, as soon as I saw that, I said that one day I'm going to make films, and I'm going to make them like that. And you know, it's when I really started searching for a life in film.
You spoke about sort of turning that, you know, natural creative talent that you had for acting into sort of hustling. What was it like to then potentially turn it into a career? How did that kind of come about?
I won't call it a career. It's a love for me, you know. In 2008, 2008, I wrote a film, and several people saw it. Several people wanted it. We were going to get it made. My life at the time was insane. My head was all over the place. I started falling in to the wrong crowds. I started drinking again, and it led me down a very dark path to where I lost the film for 4 years. And I've permanently shelved that, but it's not necessarily even wanting to be in front of the camera or behind the camera. I just love film, and you know, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to just do something to create art, because I was never good at anything else. It was the only thing that people would tell me that I was good at, that they were proud of me about. You know, they would read my stuff and they would say, this is just, you know, this is beautiful. Why don't you do it for a living? And I'm like, well, I can't. You know, and it was the fear that sat there. I'd given up, really, on looking at a career in film. I'd given up on wanting to sort of push forward. And then I got a message from a friend of a friend who was Donna Triggs, who was casting for the Souvenir, and she asked me to go and speak to Joanna, because there was a potential role there. So I had my marriage had broken down, so I was having my daughter at, you know, at different times, but I had her with me, and we got taken out to the we jumped on a bus into Fakenham, and then we got picked up, but and then we got taken out to the set, and I just sat with Joanna, and we just had a really long talk.
That's amazing.
And yeah, she asked me to put some of that knowledge in there, because, you know, she told me she wanted to make this film, and that was it, really.
Pre-Souvenir, you've been very open about the challenges that you've kind of faced. For those maybe unfamiliar with your story, where has your life kind of taken you physically and mentally?
So I've struggled with mental health issues my whole life, and struggled with drink and drugs, and addiction has dogged me since I was 14 years old. On and off, I had various long-term sobriety, and then I'd end up back on it, and then I'd have sobriety again. And, you know, I always said that I worked a program, but I didn't. I was just kind of lazy about my recovery. and you know, it's this time. You know, I'm 6 years, 4 months into recovery.
Incredible.
Working a 12-step program. And yeah, I guess that it's a little different this time. I've got a loving family, loving, supporting wife. I've got a whole community, a church that I go to. I became a Christian a few years ago, an actual proper Christian. And you know, people have just sort of been there. I ended up getting really ill in 2015, where I ended up with brain damage through hypoxia, and kind of that shifted my thinking. And I guess I just didn't really want to chase anything, and you know, that's when I got asked to speak to Joanna, really, about doing, about what goes through the head of an addict, really.
When you kind of have that kind of conversation with someone like Joanna Hogg, what's it like when you hear that that's someone that's so receptive to your stories and wants to incorporate that into their film to make it as authentic as possible?
I didn't actually know who Joanna was, and I was sat sort of in a little room, just talking to her, and you know, she was just asking about who I was, what my life was, you know, how my head was, and then she just said that, you know, asked me if you know, some things were put by me if I'd, you know, help with the authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. There's quite a nice scene in there, where he's set out all his works on the side in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I suppose that was kind of the bizarrest day for me, just seeing all that and helping the craft services and just set that up, wardrobe set, and it was surreal. It was really surreal, but quite rewarding.
Was she a director? When we kind of touched on it earlier, you are a jack of all trades in terms of what you bring to different films and your own work. Do you see a lot of sort of Joanna Hogg in your sort of self, that very much auteur kind of vision in terms of work? You know, she's a writer, director, very much involved in a lot of aspects. Is that, do you feel that you're sort of peas in a pod in a way?
Yeah, I mean, Joanna, she has a unique way of working that really kind of parallels how I look at a project. I like to work and play with improvisation, not work to a script, you know, as much as I can, and give it a air of realism. And that's what the Souvenir feels like to me. You know, it feels like a sort of a quite realistic, you know, that, you know, I grew up like 1982, 1983 that it's set. You know, I would have been 6, 7 years old, to a massive contrast from that. I grew up in Northern England, in a market town surrounded by pit towns, you know, and grew up around miners. So it was, it's a massive difference in sort of vision, but I guess it kind of parallels, again, my own sort of thoughts on an opposite scale.
One of those things that you touched on is obviously you're a consultant on the film. What is your remit when they agree to sort of have you on to kind of bring this authenticity? What is their kind of expectation of you, kind of going from an acting role to, you know, this additional task as well?
Yeah, I mean, the acting was only sort of a small part of it. You know, my whole sort of involvement wasn't a massive part of it, but you know, they just wanted to make sure that they didn't get anything wrong. They wanted the correct terminology from the correct sort of people. Joanna's not the sort of person to show gratuitous drug use in there. I mean, you'll see that in the film. It's not really there. You know, it's more suggested, and she's more of a suggestive filmmaker. That's something that I would have done different on a personal level. But yeah, it was just, I suppose the biggest part of it was making Tom aware of how it is to go through cold turkey. That was difficult.
Yeah. How did you and sort of Joanna work together? What was that dynamic like between the two of you as creative talents to make this film as authentic as possible? It's a very personal film for her, but it equally becomes a very personal film for you as well in terms of your contribution.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's her film. She really gave me a chance to come on and shine. You know, she was very supportive. She, you know, I think we work quite well together. You know, I respect her a hell of a lot as a director. You know, I've seen the Souvenir a couple of times now, and it you know, it does get better. Every time I watch it, there's more that I notice. I wouldn't say that there was a sort of process between Joanna and I. It was just, if something needed saying, if something needed to be different, if Tom needed to act a certain way, I would suggest it. And you know, most of the time it would go down that way. You know, it wasn't me saying, no, it must be this way, must be, you know, and Joanna like doing that. It was very much I think that it should be done this way. I think that he would be feeling this way and this is what he would be doing. And then Joanna was like, well, okay. So we'll try it that way and then we'll try it another way. And she, you know, she's very good at that and you know, quite good at handling the challenges of that.
What was that working relationship like with you and Tom? How receptive was he to your ideas, and how did it help with your kind of background in acting as well to be able to sort of sell those ideas to a fellow actor at times?
Oh, Tom is absolutely lovely, an absolute gentleman. He was as supportive as he could be. Gives the best hugs as well. You know, there were a couple of times when I got a bit overwhelmed watching him do what I, you know, suggested for him to do. You know, it was mainly the cold turkey scene, and it was probably the single most difficult thing having to watch, because I put a lot of myself into Tom, and then Tom kind of channeled that, and it was he was really supportive. It was really lovely. I've got a massive respect for him. You know, he's a massive talent. He's really underused, I believe, in you know, in this industry.
We're talking obviously the day before Mank drops on Netflix, his new film. I'm very interested to see what he's going to be like as Orson Welles after watching the Souvenir.
Yes.
It'll be very interesting to watch that one tomorrow night.
Yeah, I might give that a go.
What I found really interesting, I think this was my maybe fourth time watching the Souvenir before we had our interview, was I really appreciated almost the body horror element, I think, that's captured so well in this film. It reminds me of another film, Requiem for a Dream, in a way, where at the beginning we've got Tom, wonderful suits, surrounding himself in lovely restaurants, and as the film goes on, he gets paler. We see his body change and morph. What's it like watching that unravel sort of on the film, that physical transformation, as well as sort of the acting side as well?
It's kind of daunting, to be honest, because, like I say, I put a lot of myself into helping Tom get that, try and get that authenticity. And to be fair, he took it all on, and he's very good at pushing that forward, and seeing him unfurl on screen. I didn't know any of the other scenes that were filmed, only the scenes that I was in, are involved in. And yeah, just to watch that sort of metamorphosis, from the sort of bouncy, nice guy at the start to what he turned into towards the end, it was kind of humbling.
Obviously, the toxic, the relation, it's not obviously him as a character also has effects on other people. We see what becomes quite a toxic relationship between sort of Julie and Anthony, and it was really fascinating to watch. It's one of my favorite elements of the film. Very few of us experience that type of relationship where someone is addicted. Did you feel that was brought to life really kind of well, sort of how an addict can sort of function and how they impact on their significant other?
Yeah, I mean, addiction is an extremely personal disease, and if it affects the addict in such a profound way. But what people fail to realize is that it affects the people around the addicts as well in a different way. So it's extremely antisocial, and I think that the way that it was portrayed, that the bitterness and the resentment that came through is all a natural part of sort of losing somebody to it. I've lost people to addiction. I've seen how it goes, as well as being on the other side. So yeah, it's realistic. I'll give it that.
Yeah, because it seemed that there was so many elements to that kind of that relationship. There was like the gaslighting, the financial side, the manipulation, deceit, theft. It was really quite fascinating to see how that kind of relationship with addiction impacts on a relationship and all the different tentacles it takes into one.
Yeah, when you're that far into addiction, they say it's soul destroying. I would say that what it actually does is takes your soul and locks it away in a cage. And there's always remnants there of the person that you used to be. But when you're in that sort of frame of mind, it's not even a frame of mind, you're just surviving, and you just go through such a change. No person, no human force can change you. People, you got a family that love you, and they will beg you to stop. And you might have all the intentions in the world in stopping, but until you can admit that you've got a problem, and then admit that that there's no human power out there that could stop you, and that the only way that you can do it is through handing your will and your life over to something that is out of your control, then you're going to get lost.
What was your experience like being on set, watching this unfold? Obviously, you spoke about being quite personal and investing a lot in the performances. What was an average day on set like for you when you were involved in your consultancy role?
It was mainly sat about. Lots of coffee been brought in. On a cold day, and just, Joanna's quite a perfectionist, so there'll be a few takes. So a scene could take half a day or a day, depending. So it was just, I'd get called in, go in, so, I'd sit about drinking coffee, and that was it really. And then I'd be called on set. I'd be taken there. I'd just sit down and go through how I believe the scene should be played.
You're obviously, as a filmmaker yourself, was there anything you picked up from Joanna and the team, how they worked, that you thought, oh, that really inspired me, I'm going to maybe take that into my next film or work?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've my films are, I would say, quite amateurish. I'm still learning. I hold my hands up to that. But I absolutely love just improvisation, and letting actors do what actors do and bring in a sort of realism. And I guess that's what Joanna does. She has a clear, concise vision of how she wants a scene to play out. She obviously wants the intricacies to be in there. She wants it to be as realistic as possible, and in saying that, she likes people to be realistic as possible with dialogue. And some of it you just can't write. You have to let actors just get it off the heart.
You've also got an appearance in the film as the intruder, and it's a very striking moment. While it's short, it seems to be very telling of where Anthony is at the moment. He's got this fantastic, loving partner, and what I took from it and assumed is that he's now turned to turning tricks potentially with another man. What did you how did you end up in this role of the intruder, and what did you think of that moment and your involvement really with Anthony's journey at that point?
Well, I mean, that was that's Ray. It's credited as the intruder, but that to me was Ray, and he it was just, I suppose Ray was quite raw. Joanna's left a lot to think about. She leaves it to the audience to kind of fill in the blanks. I've had people totally get the scene, but I've also had people say to me, "What's it all about? What's that scene about?" It's kind of, I don't know. When you first watch it, I guess it can kind of feel a bit out of place, and you can think, what is that? But that is the insanity that addiction takes you to. It's the madness. I've woken up in people's flats and not know where I've been. I woke up in Glasgow once. Which was hundreds of miles away from where I lived.
Yeah.
after a bottle of tequila in a flat in Glasgow. So I can understand it happening, and it was kind of, it was weird to play, but
it's interesting to have a role like that where it might be a short scene, but it's open to interpretation. There's me thinking he's soliciting to make, whether it's an extra few quid to get his next hit, but other people thinking, oh, is it just someone that's just had a long night and has ended up there, sharing a few drugs? Is it telling perhaps what people think or their thoughts on addiction and the way it takes place when you hear those interpretations?
I like to think what my interpretation of that scene would be, my own personal interpretation, not necessarily what Joanna's is, but that Ray was there, invited, that maybe Ray had a certain product that that Anthony needed, and Anthony had the place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was kind of a mutual, to me, a mutual understanding between them both. Mm-hmm. I don't think there was any malice in Ray's character whatsoever. I think he was just looking for a bit of warmth, a warm flat, mm-hmm. which is what it was.
Absolutely. It's King's Road as well, so you're definitely going to be guaranteed a lovely place to stay there.
Yeah, exactly. Not everybody gets to be on King's Road. Especially in that day and age. So I think, I feel Ray is an artistic type, like Anthony, but has gone down a vastly different road to him.
Yeah.
He's a more working class sort of parallel, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Obviously, this is a slight spoiler for people that haven't watched The Souvenir, so step away, watch the film, and then come back. But at the end, Anthony dies. He can't beat his addictions. Was there a moment for yourself potentially where you watch something like that and it could be a sliding door for you or for other people that face challenges with addictions, where they think that could have been me if I hadn't have won a certain battle against, what I've been kind of going through? Did that cross your mind potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I've done 8 funerals in a week before of people that I've known and lost to addiction when I was around certain fellowships and stuff, and it's hard. It's a place that I very nearly ended up several times, and it could have gone so different for me. And I'm kind of blessed that how my life has changed, but I'm also very aware that could have been me.
Mm-hmm.
And my family would have been the people mourning my loss, and that's quite sobering.
Yeah. When did you get the chance to see the film for the first time, and what was your initial reaction and expectation going in?
So I was invited to the premiere in London, but I couldn't get there. So unfortunately, then there was a premiere in Norfolk, and I couldn't get there either. So I ended up waiting for it to come out on video on demand, really, and that's how I saw it. And yeah, in fact, I only watched it a couple of weeks ago for the second time, to sort of see how far I've come from there.
Yeah.
I haven't. I've made my own film since that, and I've had a few festival nominations for 2 films I made on no budgets with friends, which is what I like to do, and it's never any money. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the love. I absolutely just adore the medium of cinema. So it's kind of, I kind of lost where I was going there, but
what did you think when you watched it for the first time?
Yeah, I was kind of, it was strange. I've sat and I've watched my stuff that I've made, and it's been short films and stuff like that, and I've always thought, I'm not really one for being in front of the camera anyway. I even though I've done a bit of acting, I prefer to be behind the lens. And I sat and watched it, and I thought it was good. It took me a few days to process it, process my feelings on it. And then I discussed how I felt with my wife, and then didn't watch it up until, like I say, a couple of weeks ago, and then I watched it again, and I kind of got more from it.
What's it like when you have a film like this where it's been widely seen in the UK and sort of festival circuits? Curzon released it here, and then A24 in America, which is a huge boutique brand, obviously. And the film has been critically acclaimed and applauded. What's it like to have something where you contributed, you worked on, and you gave so much of yourself to the whole process, helping Tom, etc. And Joanna, did it feel for you to work with something like that where you think it's gone on to be so successful and to have played a key role in it?
It's humbling. I live on a day at a time, and it was a part of my life when nobody would sort of give me a chance, and Joanna needed somebody that had a knowledge. It could have been anybody else, but it was me, and I'm extremely grateful and blessed for that. It was an absolute pleasure to do. I love it. I talk about it with my friends, and it's something that I'll never forget. It was an education.
Yeah. Naturally, I wouldn't expect you to be able to reveal much potentially, but obviously there's going to be a Souvenir Part 2. Are you involved in any way with that film? And if so, I'm not expecting any sort of comments about it, but what's it been like to potentially return to that world again?
Well, obviously I can't say too much. I was involved in this. All I will say is, all I can say is I was involved in a small way. Nowhere near like the first time, but I was involved in a small way, and it was nice to see Joanna again.
Well, hopefully we can get you back on again in the future for when that second film drops. It'll be good to get your take on Part 2. I mean, at the moment, naturally, we're still in a deep lockdown here in the UK at time of recording. How have things been for you? Naturally, it's a challenge at the moment for creatives and artists right now, but you've been doing these fantastic interviews. You've been, really productive during it. What's it been like for you in lockdown, and what kind of successes have you made of it?
Well, I really struggled with the first lockdown. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't do anything but watch films, 80s films. It was the only way that I could process in my head. I don't deal very well with being confined, and you know, it was the biggest part of when I had my breakdown in hospital. It's because I was confined to a room. So I didn't find it very easy at all to start with. So yeah, I just fell into a world of films. And it was only through, there's a guy by the name of James English, from your neck of the woods, does these true crime podcasts. I'm extremely blessed to be a part of some people's lives that have been through certain hardships that I've been through, that we've shared, and some of them are, let's say, known in the sort of criminal world. So, you know, I watching that, and then watching James do his interviews and knowing that he comes from a similar sort of background. He has a lot of mental health problems, and you know, he started doing these interviews, and I just love talking to people. I'm not naturally a confident person anymore, so you know, it was just, it was a way for me to beat the boredom.
Yeah.
So my good friend Jason Edwards, who did the first sort of video, he's a barricade and hostage negotiator.
Oh, wow.
And I just found that really interesting. So I wanted to know about that, and he'd written a book about exposing narcissists. He does a lot of work with people in abuse, you know, and I've spent a lot of time around people that are survivors.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of, I really enjoyed doing that with Jason. And then a chance came to interview Dominic Nagus. And then it was, a guy called Ben Spann that tackles knife crime. And then it was Peter Blexley, who does Hunted, ex-former undercover cop. And it was his interview that really sort of made people sort of get that respect for me as an interviewer. You know, I just really enjoy doing it.
No pressure on me interviewing the interviewer today.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're more seasoned than I am. I'm still learning. I've only been doing it a few weeks. You know, it's still trying to learn how to sign off after an interview and how to start, and it's not always that easy for me, but it's helping me with my confidence.
That's fantastic.
You know, I love interviewing people, so yeah, I've just been sort of entertaining myself with it. Really, it was just an exercise for me to get a bit more experience in maybe talking to people, and it just kind of took off. And you know, I've got a few people that are waiting for sort of interviews that are on the sort of middle end of the, I wouldn't say fame, but or notoriety, but they've written books about their lives, and you know, I was supposed to do one with an author yesterday called Tracy McNess, but I like to do them live.
Yeah.
And you know, with live, there's a lot of kinks and problems, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I tried to persist. It just couldn't happen. So we're going to have to, like this, pre-record the interview.
Sounds good.
At some point, but yeah, I enjoy it.
I've enjoyed it too, you know, interviewing people. We've been doing the interviews on this podcast and my other one for years now, but it's one of those ones where it's maybe just me that I've done hundreds of them, but I'm always nervous before them. I get an imposter syndrome, fear of like, oh my God, they're going to think, who's this guy? What a silly question, this or that. And every time afterwards, I think, oh, I think that went really well. And you know, I'm always so grateful for whether it's someone like yourself or anyone involved that we can always get on to share their story. It means so much that people come on this for free to share their story. And it makes my day in lockdown, where it's so episodic. It's what's on Netflix, what is the Spurs game on tonight? All these sorts of things. It's like, oh, I'm looking forward to just chatting with someone involved in film and so on. It makes me really happy, and I'm glad that you've been enjoying them too.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I always volunteer my time. You know, it's not about money for me. It's never been about money. I don't do it for money. I do it because I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I love creating art. I love being part of art, whether it's been created by me or not. Money's irrelevant. You know, it's not going to buy me happiness. You know, I get a lot from helping people, being a part of their journey. I believe every person is a book. Every person has a story. Some stories end before their time. Some go on long, and some just build on with time. So you know, and it's up and down, which is how it's been for me. But you know, I just absolutely adore the world of film and just entertaining people and being a voice for people that don't have one.
Yeah.
I never had a voice. I never felt I had a voice when I was a kid. You know, I love my mum and dad very much. And when I was told I was adopted, I kind of lost a part of me, and I lost a part of my voice, and I used that to become other people because I wasn't comfortable in being myself. Now I know who I am, and I've learned who I am. Then, you know, it's massively different. I'm comfortable in myself, in my body, and it's just, you know, I'm just so glad to be alive.
I'm so glad that you're here to talk with us. It's been fantastic to hear that, and it's hard not to have a smile, a little tear in my face. Just, you know, I'm really glad that you're alive. And as I say, we've interviewed so many people on this podcast about films and arts, but you know, we've never had someone so personal and gone through so much. And I think anyone that listens to this will get even more from a film like the Souvenir, and you know, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. You know, it's just nice to be sort of recognised for my efforts. Not that I went out there to get recognised for my efforts. I did it because I genuinely wanted to do it, and I love doing it. But it's nice to be able to talk to somebody that has a deep connection with film, as I do. But it's also nice to be able to connect with somebody that has an appreciation for something that I've done.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm extremely humbled by that, and I like to live a humble life.
Yeah. The Souvenir was released in America by A24. We pose this question to everyone we have on the podcast. Have you got any highlights of the A24 filmography? Feels like it's the hardest question. We've gone into some really deep places today, and here we go into this one.
Yeah. I like Midsummer. You know, I think that's quite a haunting film. But ever since becoming aware of A24, I see films from the past or films that are made now that I feel have an A24 influence or an A24 feeling. So not necessarily A24 films, but you know, films like Nicolas Cage's The Wicker Man, or Mandy. I feel it is a great film. I feel that they have sort of that vibe. I've seen a little bit of The Lighthouse, not a massive great deal.
One of those ones, if you're stuck in lockdown, it's maybe not the best film to watch at the current moment.
No, I mean, I've got 5 kids, so it's like I've got kids running around during the day, and then night times it's doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
So it has been sort of recently. So yeah, but I mean, I've my stepboy is coming up to 15, so we sit down and we watch films together. I've introduced him to films that he wouldn't necessarily have watched on his own.
That's good.
So
That's
kind
great
of
parenting, that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my daughter who lives with her mum who comes at the weekends, and I'm trying, since she's been younger, I've introduced her to things that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So they have a varied diet of films between them, but I try and have an influence in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I was just thinking, on your social media, you had these fantastic pictures. I think it was of your daughter that you took to the set of the Souvenir. And I think you had a lovely photo, a couple of years old now, I think. It was just fantastic to see your daughter there on the set of the Souvenir.
Yes, yeah. She wasn't very old. She's now 13, so she would have only been about 10. Because it took a couple of years for it to come out here. So, I mean, she likes it. She's grown up around sort of student films and sets and different creatives. So she has that perception. I don't think she's 13, so she's still looking for direction.
Yeah.
High school is difficult, isn't it? So, I think she's lost a bit of her creativeness, but she's always been my biggest fan.
That's great.
Always been my biggest fan.
That's fantastic. One of these things, we've spoken about some of your work and stuff that you're doing just now. For those that are tuning in and want to check out your live videos or your films or any of your work or poetry, etc., where would you kind of recommend people to check these things out, and what would you recommend?
I would say Facebook, really. As the accidental journalist. I was never meant to be anything. I was always told I'd never amount to anything. And certainly learning to read and write in my later years, I never thought I would amount to anything. And sort of the accidental journalist, I wanted to get a few of my poems out, and that was it. And it was, I ended up being a voice for survivors and a whole network of people through talking to them. And that really changed my life. So, I would say, Jack W. Gregory, the accidental journalist on Facebook. That's where most of my stuff is, or Courage Under Fire Productions, which is facebook.com/fight and film. And that's some of the things that we did, like Elise, which was kind of haunting in itself.
Well, I want to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart for talking with us today. It's been emotional to listen to some of these stories and experiences, and it's made one of my favorite films of the past few years feel even richer, and will give me a lot to think about when I listen to when I watch it again. And we have listeners in here, America, and around the world, and I'm sure all of them are really grateful for what you've shared with us today. It's never easy to talk with strangers or to share stories, so I'm really grateful that you've chosen to share your stories with us. So thank you so much, and I wish you
You're welcome.
all the best going forward with health and everything just now.
Brilliant, thank you.